بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم المصطفى محمد وآله
اللهم
الطيبين
صل على
الطاهرين
محمد
لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of history of Shia Islam. Tonight we start the period from the 10th to the 12th century after Islam. It's Hijri calendar. And the first dynasty is Safavid Dynasty. Safavids were initially a Shia family from the city of Ardabil, northwestern Iran. They were Sayyids and they were also Sufis. They had tendencies towards Sufism, and their head figure was Safiuddin Ardabili, and because of that they became famous as Safavi or Safiuddin, and they managed to establish one central government in Iran after almost 800 years. So after Sassanids, there was no one single government. As you saw in the previous centuries, there were, dynasties ruling different parts of Iran, or it was ruled by the Abbasids, for example, part of it. So they managed to again establish one inclusive central government based on the school of Ahlul Bayt. So the first king, Shah Ismail Safavi, started this dynasty in the year 907, beginning of the 10th century, 907. And this continued up to 1148, for about 248 years, or 241 years, to be more precise. So let us discuss in some details this period of the history of Shia. This is very important. It is considered to be one of the golden periods for Islamic civilization. Unfortunately, sometimes there is criticism about Safavids, and sometimes this comes from non-Shia who criticize them. Sometimes it comes even, unfortunately, from some Shia, and who think that Safavids just were, promoting, some kind of, superficial cultural things, even one of the contemporary writers, he makes a contrast between Tashayyu' Alawi and Tashayyu' Safavi. He wants to say Tashayyu' Safavi is against Imam Ali's Tashayyu'. Of course, maybe he didn't mean from every aspect, but he wanted to criticize. And maybe, they were not free from problems, of course. No one was masoom, but it's not that they were just promoting, some superficial things in order to, for example, establish their government, etc. Their founder, as I said, was a very respected figure, a great spiritual, knowledgeable person, and they made lots of efforts to educate people. They worked hard with the ulama, they invited ulama, as we will explain. So we should not be affected by negative propaganda against the Safavids. Few things contributed to the formation of Safavid governance. One was attacks of Mongols, as we talked about it. It is true that later, they did some good things. Some of them even became Muslim. Some of them even became Shia, as we talked about Oljaito, etc. But overall, this was very destructive time. Lots of killing happened by them, especially at the beginning, destruction, and it was a disaster to live that time. Therefore, people were very much in need of an alternative. Another thing is that, and it is very understandable, some people develop tendency towards Sufism. When you are faced with lots of challenges outside, one way to protect yourself is to go deep into spirituality. Of course, if there is balance, you will not, isolate yourself from what is happening outside. But if there is no balance, you may even go very deep into your own, own shell. So there are different types of Sufis. We have, very balanced Sufis in the history. We have, Sufis who are Shia, who are scholars. And we have Sufis that are just thinking about, their own spirituality. There are different types of. Some of them practice Sharia, some of them don't practice. So we don't have negative opinion about Sufis. We say it depends on the type of approach that they have. In any case, some of the Shia became interested in Sufism and Sufi, practices and orientations, and Safavids actually belong to this kind of approach. Another thing that contributed is activities of Shia ulama, Shia scholars in the time of Mongols or Taimurids. People like Khaja Nasiruddin Tusi, we talked about him. Allame Hilli, we talked about him. Shahid Awwal, we talked about him. And people that we didn't talk about, like Sayyid Haydar Amuli, Ibn Fahd Hilli. These are some of the scholars that worked very hard. Even, some of them, they lost their lives in order to educate people. Even sometimes they took the risk to work closely to some of the governments, with some of the governments who were not Shia, so that they can, educate them, they can reduce the pressure on the Shia. They did sometimes debates, sometimes they did travels to many places, which were very difficult. Sometimes they learned from other mazahib so that they can teach their mazahib, they can make good relation with them, they have permission from Sunni masters, Shia masters. So they did lots of work, and this helped with establishment of a Shia dynasty all over Iran. Also, when Abbasid government, the Khilafah of Abbasid, was destroyed by Hulagu Khan, by Timurids, this was also by itself a kind of free and new space for the Shia, because in large, when there was the Caliphate of Abbasids, the Shia in large, not always, they were not very free, and this gave them some maybe more freedom, more confidence that they can establish governance of their own. And also another thing that contributed, and we talked about it, that we had lots of local Shia dynasties in different places in Iran. We talked about, for example, Sarbedaran, we talked about Mar'ashis, we talked about Alekiya. So there were lots of also small local Shia dynasties, like, what is now some provinces of Iran. So this also helped. So this led to establishment of the Safavid Dynasty in the year 907. Shah Ismail, the king Ismail, started his kingdom, and he declared the school of Ahlul Bayt as the official madhab of Iran. Of course, they were very careful to respect other madhahib, and as we will say, actually one of the things they were very strict about it, to avoid ghulat, those who were exaggerating from theological perspective about Ahlul Bayt, those who were attacking, for example, other Muslims, they were very much against them. It's not that, what some people say, that, they forced people to become Shia, or, some people say they killed many people so that they established the school of Allah. No, it was not like that. I'm not saying no mistake took place, but it was all through culture, through education. And many people already in different parts of Iran had accepted the school of Ahlul Bayt, or there were Sunnis who loved Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. One of the famous historians that we have, alhamdulillah, now is Sheikh Rasul Ja'fariyan. I don't know if you have heard his name. He has many books on history. He's a sheikh now must be in his 60s. And he has done lots of work on history. And he says that there was a kind of current among Sunni Muslims in Iran that they believe in 12 Imams. They were Sunni, but they believe in 12 Imams. I actually myself have seen people in UK. We have some Sunni brothers that they have faith in 12 Imams. Even one of them, told one of our brothers that he's trying to make, masjid in the name of every Imam. It's amazing, they're Sunni, but they believe in 12 Imams. So Sheikh Rasul Ja'fariyan says that we don't know exactly how they were, putting this idea in their theological framework, but based on many works that we have from Mawara'un Nahr, which is Minor Asia, Iran, and Ottoman Empire, we find that they are Sunni, but they believe in 12 Imams and they love 12 Imams. It's very amazing. So this helped. It's not that they were against Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. One of the things that happened at that time was developing Shia theory about governance. So ulama had to work hard to develop fiqh for this condition, new condition. They used scholars in Iran, but they invited Shia scholars from other places, as I said before. Especially many scholars were invited from Jabal Amil, from southern Lebanon. Today we call it Lebanon. So from year 910, shortly after he became the king, up to 1158, many ulama from Jabal Amil went to Iran and helped the spread of the culture of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. On the other hand, they had special positions in the governance for ulama. There were positions like Sadr, Shaykhul Islam, Qadi in their governance. Some have explained it in this way, might be interesting for you. For example, if someone was the highest religious figure, he was called Sadr. Sadr means head, or although it means chest, but sometimes it's head, means top. Okay, when we start, for example, top of the list, we say Sadr. So there was such a position. Maybe some people whose surname is Sadr is because their ancestors at that time had this position. They were the highest religious figure in this state. Then there were people who were appointed by them as religious jurists, as Hakim Shara, or people who were responsible for awqaf, endowments. They had to be religious scholars so that they observed Islamic rulings. Or they were judges who were appointed. Or there were people who were appointed to be responsible for Sayyids. In the Safavid era, Sayyids were very much respected. One of the Safavid kings later, Shah Hussein I, changed the name into Mullah Bashi. Mullah, still we use it for a scholar, we say Mullah. So Mullah Bashi was the name that he gave to Sadr instead of Sadr. Shaykhul Islam was the chief Qadi. If people had affairs about marriage, divorce, it was taken care of by these judges who were Shia scholars who were appointed. If they were Shia, of course. If they were Sunnis, then they were dealing differently. And then there were, it's interesting, there were also religious scholars whose work was inside army. They were called Qazi Askar. Now we have some people whose surname is Qazi Askar. One of the actually ulama who is now in charge of the shrine of Hazrat Abdul Azim, his surname is Qazi Askar. Qazi Askar was the chief, or you can say the judge, inside the army. Askar means army. So it shows that they try to bring the Shia fiqh and scholarship into different aspects of their system. They were getting advice from Shia scholars. If you are interested, you can study the relation between King Tahmasp and Muhaqqiq Hilli. He was so much respected that the king says whoever is appointed by him or dismissed by him is appointed or dismissed by me. So some people who are looking negative, they say, they try to legitimize themselves by referring to ulama. But they were very strong kings. They didn't need to do this. I'm not saying everyone was honest and sincere. I cannot judge, but I think it doesn't make sense to say everything was, to show off. Why they needed to show off, or say we are with ulama, when they have so much power, and sometimes also they didn't listen to ulama. So it means that they were able to disobey them. Okay. Then what we have is some of the policies of Safavid kings. So one was, as we said, they removed pressure from the school of Ahlul Bayt, let Shia scholars to do their work, to do their teaching, their sharing, their tabligh. And it is said that for the first time, Salatul Jummah, Friday prayer, started in Iran, and it became something fixed in the Shia cities. Maybe before that, the Shia were not able to have their own Salatul Jummah. The coins which they made also was carrying the names of Ahlul Bayt. Even sometimes on the coins they had a small short poem about Imam Ali's right for Imam on the coin. They were also against zealots and those who were exaggerating or those who were deviant, and they didn't want to let people to take advantage and attack others, etc. As I said, they invited Shia scholars. Another policy was they paid attention to infrastructures, making bridges, roads, stations between cities for those who want to travel, like services, mosques, Husseyniyas, madrasas, and also refurbishing shrines of Ma'sumin or shrines of children of Imam in different places, in Mashhad, in Qom, in Qazwin, in many places. They did lots of, actually there is a special type of architecture that belongs to that era. By looking at the domes, by looking at the tiles, design, you can understand this is from this era. Also, they encouraged religious celebrations and commemorations. One of the things started at that time is called Shabih Khani. This is a special way of commemorating the tragedy of Karbala. It's like a theater playing the tragedy, both sides, good side, bad side. Or processions. People, walk, and while they're walking, they, lament, they mourn. They established tekiya. We have places that are used for azab, but sometimes they are not throughout the year used for this. Temporarily, they can be used. Sometimes we have Husayniyah throughout the year. Sometimes there's tekiya that can be temporarily, but some tekiya are also permanently. Celebrating Milad of Ahlul Bayt. So these are some of the things that they encouraged. They encouraged the poets. So many poets made beautiful poems in this period. For example, the famous poet of this, one of the famous one, is Muhtasham from Kashan. Almost in every place that there is Azar in Iran, you find some poem by محتشم. بازین چه عزا و چه ماتم و Chenno has something like this, there are like katiba that they put this poem. It's very beautiful. And also there were other poets, Wahshi Bafqi, Sahib Tabrizi, Hazin Lahiji, and Abdullah Khatifi. These are people who made poets. They established also tens of libraries. They made copies of rare books. Isfahan became the capital not of only the governance but also a capital for education, for knowledge. Since then we have a very large house in Isfahan. We have big schools, madrasas in Isfahan. Later the capital was moved to Tehran in the time of Qajars, but before Tehran the capital of Iran was Isfahan for some time, from the time of Safavids. Another thing was many then scholars, poets, philosophers were trained and then were sent, or they traveled to other parts of the world. So they benefited from ulama from Lebanon, Iraq, Bahrain, but then they trained ulama. Then many ulama went to India, for example, or other places. And these ulama, these scholars, these people who were trained and went to India, sometimes they had positions in India inside the system. Some of them even managed to form some governance there. They ruled for tens of years. They were Shia. Some of the largest, Shia masjid and Hussainiyas that we have are in India. Shia became very powerful in India, very influential in India. Even there was a time that it is said that Hawza of Najaf was very much dependent on the donations and homes coming from India. The Shia of India were very rich and very supportive, very, appreciative. But unfortunately, when India was occupied, then things changed. So this is a summary of this. Inshallah, we will continue our discussion about Safavids and the rest of the things that happened in this period. Inshallah, the next session. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
اللهم صل على محمد